So if you haven't noticed yet, one of the key parts of any relationship is communication. And that's the whole breadth of what all these love languages are about. They're about developing communication. And in order to get a marriage into a harmonious place, or a more harmonious place than it is right now, it takes that level of communication. It takes the level of communication of going, hey, what do you really want? What do you really like? What could I give you? Or what could we arrange so that you're getting the pieces of love that you need every day? Because most often people love each other, they just don't know how to say how. So in that, there's levels of this. You're going to have a primary language and a secondary language. Now, hopefully your partner's going to be able to speak one of those too. If your partner is able to speak your primary language, then that's great. You're going to have an awesome time that's going to work. If the two of you have the same top primary and secondary languages, you're going to have an easy time in the relationship. If you're like how me and my husband started out, where words of affirmation were one of my biggies, but he's really not that able to speak words of affirmation, then you're going to have to come to a different kind of relationship and a different kind of understanding. You're really going to have to understand that that every time that he does the books for me, that's him saying, I love you. Now, I may not see that as love before we got into this relationship, but I need to start making the understanding and making the equations that when he cooks me breakfast, that's him saying, I love you. Now, when you change the context, when you change this perspective on that, he's actually saying, I love you about 15 times a day. The actual words, I love you, I'm only going to hear that maybe once a week at the max. Every once in a while, I get it twice a week, but most often, it's going to be about every other week where I hear the words, I love you. Now, that has nothing to do with how much he loves you or how much he loves me. It's just the languages that he speaks. He's not going to be a guy that gets off the phone and at the end of every conversation he says, I love you. It's just not going to happen. So, it's like me asking him to sit down to pee every time he wants to pee. It's just not something that he's going to be comfortable with, not something he's comfortable with right now. So what we did in that situation is that we pumped up the physical touch. We make physical touch a very mandatory part of the day. If I want snuggles, I say, I want snuggles. And he says, okay. He gives me a time frame and he says, okay. In 5 minutes, I will come and we'll cuddle for like 5 minutes. So he's able to do that really easy. That's authentic to him. He can understand that. He can get into that, but he can't get into the words of affirmation. The other thing is that recognizing quality time. We've really had to verbalize quality time and say, okay, what would be some good quality time activities today? Well, I feel like it might be this, or I feel like it might be that. It needs to be verbalized. You need to be able to talk about this stuff and say, what counts? Because at the end of the day, here's what happens. The woman during the day, she's racking up points. Okay, he did this, he gets points. He did this, he gets points. He did that, oh, negative points. He gets this, he gets positive points. At the end of the day, the woman and the man are going to have these little books of how many points did that person get that day. Was this a low love day? Was this an average love day? Was this a high love day? And it doesn't matter what you as a partner think is love in those little tally books. It only matters what they think is love. So it's worthwhile to communicate. Find out what is love to you. What is a loving act? How do you like to receive love? And then negotiate. Then talk about it. Then go, how does this feel? Does this feel loving? Is this a loving act to you? Do I get points for this? That person is going to be able to say yes, no, maybe, depends. Communicate, communicate, communicate. That's how a relationship thrives. That's how it grows. That's how it continues. And that's what the love languages are all about.